Hello, esteemed gentlemen. The loudest man in the room is the weakest one. A line people quote, but never understand. You see, the world has been conditioned to trust noise. Oversharing is celebrated, self-promotion is seen as confidence, and silence is treated like a threat. So, when a Sigma male enters the room, calm, detached, uninterested in validation, it doesn't inspire admiration. It triggers suspicion. Here's a fact that'll twist your perception. Psychological studies show that people often associate quietness with untrustworthiness, not because it's true, but because the average mind fears what it can't categorize. And Sigma males? They're not just hard to read. They're written in a language society forgot how to speak. They don't play the popularity game. They don't audition for approval. They don't show up to prove anything. And that drives normal people insane. Why? Because we live in a world where blending in is survival. And Sigma males, they don't blend. They vanish, reappear, observe from a distance. And if you're lucky, very lucky, they might actually speak. But even then, they're not trying to connect. They're scanning. And let's be honest, when someone doesn't laugh at your jokes, doesn't chase status, and doesn't need your social crumbs, it's easier to just label him weird, rude, or probably a serial killer. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear are 20 brutally honest truths about how society really perceives Sigma males. And spoiler alert, it's not flattering, it's not fair, but it's fascinating. And hey, if you're a Sigma watching this, don't worry. They'll still misunderstand you after this video. But at least now you'll know why. Let's dive in. Number 1. He's a control freak in disguise. He's a control freak in disguise. That's how a lot of normal people describe a Sigma male. And it's not because he bosses anyone around or micromanages others. It's because he doesn't need anyone to manage him. That kind of self-command is rare, and frankly, it makes people uncomfortable. Most folks operate like emotional stock markets. They rise and fall based on external input. Sigma males, they opt out. They refuse to hand over the remote control of their lives to anyone. And when someone refuses to be influenced, manipulated, or emotionally blackmailed, it doesn't come off as strength to the average mind. It comes off as someone who's trying to dominate silently. The Sigma male doesn't need permission to do what he wants. He doesn't ask for validation before making decisions. He listens, but he rarely lets outside opinions override his internal compass. And this makes people feel powerless around him because they realize, sometimes subconsciously, that they have zero leverage over him. He's not playing by their emotional rules, and that unnerves them. Now, instead of respecting that independence, many people twist it. They say he's controlling. Not because he controls them, but because he controls himself in ways they've never seen before. He doesn't overshare. He doesn't need constant communication. He doesn't react the way people expect. That unreadable, unshakable demeanor, it's threatening to anyone whose sense of control depends on being able to emotionally decode others. People are used to others being predictable, pliable, or at least emotionally exposed. Sigma males don't give that. They keep their emotional deck close to their chest. And that restraint is so foreign that others label it with the only word they know: control. But what they're really sensing isn't control over others. It's a man who refuses to give up control over himself. And in today's world, that's damn near revolutionary. So they label it, they villainize it. Because if they accepted it for what it really is, total sovereignty, they'd have to confront the truth. They've never had that kind of power over their own lives. And that stings more than any actual control ever could. Number 2, he has no real friends. That's sad. He has no real friends. That's sad. That's the pity-soaked judgment people throw at Sigma males when they see them moving alone or keeping a tight, invisible circle. In a world where people measure social worth by how many followers, friends, or group chats you have, a Sigma's quiet detachment looks like failure. If you're not constantly surrounded, constantly interacting, constantly being seen, people assume something's missing. But here's what they don't get. The Sigma male doesn't collect people. He curates them. He doesn't need a tribe to validate his existence. He doesn't use others to fill time, distract from boredom, or plug emotional holes. If someone's in his life, it's because they earned their place with authenticity, not because they just happen to be convenient, available, or loud. Still, to outsiders this looks like social poverty. They think, he must be lonely, or no one wants to be close to him. But that's just projection again. What they're really saying is, they can't imagine living without constant connection, so anyone who does must be broken. They confuse being surrounded with being supported. But Sigma males would rather have one honest, low-maintenance bond than 100 shallow ones drenched in small talk and social obligation. And let's be honest, most people keep friends they don't even like, out of habit, out of fear, out of social pressure. The Sigma male doesn't play that game. He'll walk alone before he pretends to vibe with someone just to avoid seeming weird. His silence isn't empty, it's protected. He doesn't open the gates unless someone proves they're worth the energy it takes to keep them there. That's why you rarely see his circle. It's not on display, it's not loud, it's not performative, but it's real. And that's exactly why people can't recognize it. The sadness isn't that he has fewer friends. The real sadness is how many people settle for noisy crowds and hollow connections, just to avoid the stillness that Sigma males have already mastered. He doesn't need a fan club. He's not for everyone. He's for truth, and very few people can sit in that kind of intimacy without flinching. Number 3. He's probably a misogynist or emotionally unavailable. He's probably a misogynist or emotionally unavailable. That's the lazy conclusion many jump to when they come across a Sigma male who doesn't flatter, flirt, or fawn over anyone, especially women. He doesn't do performative romance. He's not interested in putting on a show of affection just to meet someone's expectations, or to prove he's emotionally available by society's standards. And in a world built on emotional theatrics and attention-seeking, that kind of detachment doesn't just confuse people, it offends them. We live in a culture where constant validation is mistaken for love, and emotional oversharing is mistaken for depth. So when someone like a Sigma male comes along, someone who doesn't overshare, doesn't chase, doesn't crumble at rejection, people assume there must be something wrong with him. He must hate women. Or maybe he's broken, or maybe he just doesn't know how to connect. But the truth is, he connects selectively and with authenticity. He doesn't play emotional games. He doesn't follow the unspoken script that says men must prove their worth through worship or constant reassurance. That kind of independence short-circuits those who are used to transactional relationships, those who interpret a man's interest as devotion and his silence as disrespect. It's even worse when he's attractive or charismatic. Then the confusion turns to frustration. People start asking, why doesn't he want the attention he could so easily get? And when they can't answer that, they reach for the only explanation that fits their limited framework. He must be emotionally damaged, or he must hate women. But that's not the truth at all. Sigma males simply don't seek approval through romantic conquest. They're not afraid of intimacy. They're just not addicted to it. And they're not emotionally unavailable. They're emotionally precise. They give connection where it's earned, not where it's demanded. The real issue isn't that Sigma males are closed off. It's that most people are addicted to emotional validation and mistaking that addiction for connection. And when they meet someone who isn't hooked on the same drug, they call him heartless, when in reality, he's just sober. Number 4, he's hiding something, he must be dangerous. He's hiding something, he must be dangerous. That's the knee-jerk reaction many people have when they come across a Sigma male who keeps to himself. In a hyper-digital world where everyone's oversharing every detail of their lives, from what they ate to how they feel, privacy has become suspicious. If you're not posting, explaining, or justifying yourself, people assume you've got something dark to hide. Sigma males don't live out loud. They're not interested in broadcasting their every move or thought just to feel seen. And for people who equate constant visibility with honesty, that silence feels sinister. The quiet guy who doesn't laugh at your jokes, doesn't join your gossip, and doesn't jump into every conversation. He must be plotting something. He must be emotionally frozen. Or worse, he must be dangerous. This paranoia doesn't come from logic. It comes from insecurity. When someone refuses to hand over their story, others feel powerless. And instead of admitting that they can't read him, they label him as cold, arrogant, or untrustworthy. It's easier to demonize what you don't understand than to admit you have no access to it. And let's be honest, mystery doesn't sit well with most people. It forces them to fill in the blanks, and human nature tends to fill those blanks with fear. The unknown becomes threatening. So when a Sigma male walks into a room, calm and unreadable, his silence is seen not as peace, but as a warning. They think, why isn't he talking? What's he hiding? Why doesn't he open up like everyone else? And when they don't get answers, they project their own fears onto him. He's not being private, he's being secretive. He's not being reserved, he's being suspicious. That's the twist. But the truth? He's not hiding anything. He just knows that not everything needs to be said, posted, or explained. He values his inner world more than public approval. And that level of self-containment scares people because it reminds them of how much they've handed over for free, just to feel seen. Number 5. He thinks he's better than us. He thinks he's better than us. That's the unspoken judgment people often throw at Sigma males, and ironically, it has nothing to do with anything the Sigma actually says. He doesn't boast, doesn't belittle anyone, doesn't flaunt status or make others feel small, but the problem is he also doesn't need anyone. And in most social settings, that alone is seen as arrogance. We live in a world where approval is currency. Most people operate with a subtle social contract. You smile, nod, flatter, or perform humility so others feel secure around you. Sigma males don't sign that contract. They're polite, sure, but they won't shrink themselves just to make someone else feel taller. And when someone refuses to play that game, it messes with people's ego. He doesn't try to impress, which people read as disrespect. He's calm in situations where others would scramble for validation. He's not loud in a room full of noise, and that silence hits like a mirror. It makes people confront their own insecurity, their need to be noticed, liked, or admired. And that's why they call it arrogance. Not because he looks down on others, but because he simply doesn't look to them for anything. It's not that he thinks he's better, it's that he doesn't try to prove he's not. Most people soften their strength to seem relatable. Sigma males don't dilute themselves to make anyone comfortable. They show up as they are, quiet, composed, uninterested in small talk, and that makes others feel exposed. They start projecting. He thinks he's too good for us. No, he just doesn't need to explain himself to make you feel good. The brutal truth is, it's not his confidence that offends people, it's his freedom. Freedom from seeking approval, freedom from needing an audience, freedom from the desperate social clinging most people don't even realize they're doing. That's what stings. Because when someone doesn't need the group starts questioning its own value. And rather than deal with that uncomfortable truth, it's easier to just say, he thinks he's better than us. But the Sigma isn't above anyone. He's just not beneath himself. And that's what they really can't stand. Number 6. He's too quiet to trust. He's too quiet to trust. That's the kind of accusation that doesn't get shouted. It simmers behind closed doors and sideways glances. In a world that rewards loud personalities, constant opinions, and digital transparency, being quiet isn't just unusual, it's threatening. If you're not updating your status, voicing your feelings, or spilling your thoughts into every conversation, people start connecting dots that don't exist. Silence, to a Sigma male, isn't emptiness, it's intention. He speaks when it matters. He observes before he reacts. He values listening more than interrupting. But to the average person, silence isn't calm, it's camouflage. And if someone isn't making noise, the assumption is that he's hiding something. Cold, calculating, arrogant, maybe even dangerous. It's the tragedy of modern communication. Noise equals presence. If you're not loud, they assume you're not real. If you're not expressive, you must be repressed. And if you're not always on, something must be off. The Sigma male breaks every one of those assumptions. He can sit in a room and not say a word, and somehow still own the atmosphere. That unnerves people. They don't know what he's thinking. And because they can't read him, they mistrust him. People crave predictability. They want to put you in a box, label it, and feel safe. But a Sigma's quiet forces others to sit with their own discomfort. They can't decode him, so they assume the worst. It's not that he's hiding anything. It's that he doesn't feel the need to prove anything. He's not desperate to fill silences or manage how others perceive him. But that level of self-possession is so rare, it feels unnatural to those addicted to constant expression. They think, why isn't he talking? What's he thinking? What's wrong with him? When in reality he's just not performing. And the irony? People say they want authenticity, depth, and calm, but when they see it, they panic. Because real quiet exposes fake connection. It forces people to confront how noisy they've become just to feel seen. And when someone like a Sigma male shows up grounded and unfazed, they don't know whether to admire him or run. So they play it safe and say, he's too quiet to trust. Number 7. He's not friendly, must be a narcissist. He's not friendly, must be a narcissist. That's the snap judgment people make when they meet a Sigma male who doesn't offer instant warmth or put on a social mask. He's not rude, he's just real. He doesn't hand out forced smiles, fake compliments, or perform emotional labor just to make others feel comfortable. And in today's world, where friendliness is often confused with authenticity, that raw honesty unsettles people. Society has lowered the bar for emotional intelligence to mean be nice all the time or be constantly available. That's not connection, it's performance. And Sigma males don't do performance. If they like you, they'll show it in subtle but meaningful ways. If they don't, they won't pretend otherwise. They're not going to fake laughter, nod excessively, or bend their personality just to blend in. But most people don't know how to deal with that kind of transparency. They've grown so used to social theater that anything unscripted feels hostile. So when someone doesn't mirror their emotions or match their energy, they start labeling. He's emotionally unavailable. He's arrogant. He probably thinks he's better than everyone. Or the favorite, he's a narcissist. But here's the irony. Narcissists crave attention and validation. Sigma males couldn't care less. They're not cold, they're controlled. They're not mean. They're intentional. They value presence over performance and depth over volume. But in a world where emotional noise is mistaken for emotional intelligence, their calm gets misread as a character flaw. People want friendliness wrapped in fake empathy. Sigma males won't hand that out. They're not going to tell you what you want to hear just to smooth things over. They won't babysit your insecurities or sugarcoat their silence. They respect others by being real with them. But since most can't tell the difference between fake charm and genuine presence, they assume something must be wrong with the Sigma. The truth? He's not unfriendly. He just doesn't believe in turning himself into a performance to make other people feel good. And if that makes others uncomfortable, he won't apologize for it, because authenticity isn't rude. It's rare. Number 8. He's not trying, he must be lazy or broke. He's not trying, he must be lazy or broke. That's the default assumption people make when they can't see the hustle. In a world addicted to noise, spectacle, and constant self-promotion, if you're not loudly chasing success, it looks like you're not doing anything at all. And that's where Sigma males throw people off completely. They don't broadcast their grind. They don't romanticize struggle. They're not interested in performing productivity to earn applause. Sigma males play the long game. They operate in silence, build in private, and move without explaining. While everyone else is documenting every late night, every boss move, every grinded-out hustle session on social media, the Sigma is 2 steps ahead, quietly stacking wins no one knows about. Not because he wants to shock the world later, but because he doesn't care if the world claps at all. But to the average observer, especially those addicted to the external optics of success, this comes across as stagnation. If he's not visibly exhausted, constantly talking about his goals or drowning in busyness, people assume he must be broke, lazy, unmotivated, settling. They don't realize that silence isn't a lack of ambition. It's a lack of need for validation. The Sigma male doesn't advertise his work ethic because he's not hustling for applause. He's driven by personal vision, not public perception. So he might look like he's standing still, but in reality he's planting something that takes longer to grow, something deeper, something more permanent. This confuses people who are conditioned to associate ambition with noise. They need to see someone suffer to believe they're working. If he doesn't look busy, doesn't flaunt his rise and grind lifestyle, then he must not have a plan, right? Wrong. He has a plan. They just don't have the patience or the depth to recognize it. So they mock his stillness, laugh at his calm, judge his lack of urgency. But one day, when they finally see what he was building in the shadows, it'll be too late to understand it, because they were too distracted by the noise to notice the strategy unfolding right in front of them. Number 9, he's probably lonely and pretending to like it. He's probably lonely and pretending to like it. That's what most people think when they see a Sigma male choosing solitude. Not just tolerating it, but genuinely preferring it. And to the average person, that's unimaginable. In their minds, being alone is a punishment, not a preference. So when someone embraces it without shame or struggle, they don't believe it. They assume it's an act, a coping mechanism, a mask for sadness. But here's the thing. Sigma males don't isolate because they're broken. They separate because they're selective. Solitude isn't where they hide, it's where they thrive. It's where they do their best thinking, their deepest reflecting, and their most intentional planning. They're not sitting in silence waiting for someone to rescue them from loneliness. They're choosing it because it keeps them clear, focused, and free from the draining noise of forced social interaction. Still, people look at that and can't make sense of it. They project their own discomfort with being alone onto him. No one really wants to be alone, they say, but that's a confession, not a fact. What they mean is, they don't want to be alone. They can't face themselves in silence, so they assume no one else can either. They think the Sigma must be covering up some kind of deep sadness, that he secretly wishes to be part of the crowd, that his independence is just a defense mechanism for rejection. But that's just projection wrapped in false empathy. He's not pretending. He's simply not playing the same game as everyone else. To a Sigma, solitude is not a lack, it's a luxury. He doesn't need constant connection to feel real, and he doesn't need background noise to feel alive. He has a relationship with himself that most people never develop, because they're too busy avoiding their own reflection. The real reason they think he's pretending, because if he's actually happy being alone, then that would mean their entire identity, built on codependence, constant stimulation, and external validation, is flawed. And that truth is far scarier than any quiet man sitting alone in peace. Number 10. Why doesn't he want to belong somewhere? Why doesn't he want to belong somewhere? That's the quiet confusion that creeps into people's minds when they meet a Sigma male. He's not attached to any group. He doesn't seek out cliques, tribes, movements, or labels. He's not part of the crowd, and he's not trying to be. And to the average person, that's not independence. It's suspicious. Most people are wired to belong. It's a survival instinct that's been hard-coded into society. Join something, be part of a community, stand for a cause, wear a badge, post the hashtag. Belonging gives people a sense of identity, even if it means losing pieces of themselves in the process. So when someone doesn't chase that kind of connection, it looks like he's adrift, detached, isolated, maybe even broken. But here's the twist. The Sigma male isn't lost. He's choosing solitude over superficial connection. He's not running from people. He's avoiding the noise that comes with dependency and forced belonging. To him, freedom is being untouched by groupthink. It's not a rebellion, it's self-respect. He doesn't crave acceptance because he's already accepted himself. That's a concept most people have never experienced, so they assume it doesn't exist. They label his detachment as arrogance, his distance as loneliness, his individuality as confusion. But none of that's true. He's not looking to be found because he's not missing. He simply understands that belonging often comes with conditions. Follow the group, think like the group, speak like the group. And that's a price he's not willing to pay. The world praises independence on the surface, but punishes it in practice. When you don't align with a tribe, people don't know where to place you, and when they can't place you, they mistrust you. It's easier to say, he's just lost, than to admit, he's free in a way I don't understand. The Sigma male doesn't reject belonging out of bitterness. He avoids it because he knows most of it is built on compromise. And the only label he's interested in wearing is his own. Number 11, he thinks too deeply it's exhausting. He thinks too deeply, it's exhausting. That's the complaint people often whisper after spending time with a Sigma male. And not because he's lecturing them or flaunting intelligence, but because he refuses to live on the surface. While most people are bonding over gossip, trends, or whatever drama's trending this week, the Sigma cuts straight through the noise. He doesn't care about filler conversations. He wants to talk about why people do what they do, what's broken beneath their polished image, or what no one wants to admit out loud. And that unsettles people. For most, conversation is comfort food, light, easy, predictable. Sigma males don't serve comfort food. They serve raw reality, sometimes without seasoning. They don't ask how your weekend was. They want to know what you learned from your last failure. They don't care what you do. They want to know why you're doing it. And for people who've built their identity on surface-level validation, this kind of intensity feels invasive. But Sigma males aren't trying to overwhelm anyone. They just don't know how to stay shallow. Their mind is wired to dig. Small talk feels like slow death to them, and social rituals built around pretending everything's fine bore them to the edge of madness. So they say less, but when they speak, it's like dropping a truth bomb in the middle of a dinner party. Everyone flinches, then pretends they didn't hear it. People end up labeling him as too much, too intense, or emotionally draining. But really, they're just not used to being around someone who can't be distracted by fluff. Most people have never truly looked inward, so when someone challenges them to, even indirectly, they recoil. They call his depth weird, his questions too personal, and his silence judgmental. But that's not what's happening. The Sigma just sees straight through the mask and asks the kind of questions that threaten to crack it. And when someone makes you question the identity you've never really examined, it's easier to accuse them of being too deep than to face what's underneath. The truth? It's not that he's exhausting. It's that most people have been living too shallow for too long. Number 12, he's emotionless, like a machine in human skin. He's emotionless, like a machine in human skin. That's how many people describe a Sigma male when they can't read him, and not because he lacks emotion, but because he doesn't perform it for public comfort. In a world where emotional outbursts, dramatic storytelling, and performative vulnerability have become the standard of relatability, the Sigma's calm, measured presence feels alien. People don't understand how someone can feel deeply without putting it on display. Sigma males don't cry for attention. They don't vent for pity. They don't perform empathy like it's part of a brand. So when others expect an exaggerated emotional response, and the Sigma gives a quiet nod or a thoughtful pause instead, it's taken as coldness. His emotional restraint isn't appreciated. It's misread as a lack of feeling altogether. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The Sigma isn't detached. He's composed. He doesn't react immediately because he processes everything internally first. He doesn't see value in turning every emotional experience into a performance just to meet social expectations. In fact, he finds that exhausting and unnecessary. Yet because he doesn't emote the way others expect, people grow suspicious. Does he even care? Is he numb? Is something wrong with him? But the real issue is that most people are so used to emotional noise that they've lost the ability to recognize emotional depth when it's quiet. They confuse still water with shallow water. A Sigma male may not wear his heart on his sleeve, but that doesn't mean it's absent. He just protects it. He doesn't hand over his emotional world to people who haven't earned it. And that's what really bothers people. It's not that he feels nothing. It's that he doesn't feel the need to prove what he feels to everyone. So instead of understanding him, they simplify him. Emotionless. Cold. Unreachable. But the truth is, the Sigma male feels everything. He just doesn't need an audience for it. In a world that screams for attention, he stays silent. And that silence is mistaken not for control, but for emptiness. But only shallow eyes confuse self-control with inhumanity. Because if they looked closely enough, they'd see. He's not made of steel. He's just mastered the art of keeping his fire contained. In a world obsessed with visibility, noise, and performance, the Sigma male remains an unsettling anomaly. He doesn't chase applause, doesn't explain his silence, and refuses to dilute his identity just to fit in. And because of that, he gets misunderstood, mislabeled, and misread at every turn. People call him cold when he's composed, arrogant when he's self-sufficient, emotionless when he's simply not performative. They assume he's lost when in truth he's never followed anyone else's map to begin with. Everything about the Sigma male challenges the modern social contract. He doesn't need a crowd to feel important. He doesn't need external validation to confirm his worth. And he doesn't need shallow noise to drown out the depth of his own mind. That kind of independence, the real kind, not the Instagram version, makes people uncomfortable. So they project, they pathologize, they try to define him using their own limited lens. But here's the truth, the Sigma male doesn't need to be understood to be powerful. He doesn't need to be liked to be effective. And he certainly doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. His silence is intentional, his detachment is protection, his solitude is strategy. And while the world continues to misunderstand him, he continues to move quietly, intelligently, and relentlessly on a path most will never even see. So the next time someone says, he's too quiet, he thinks he's better, or he must be hiding something, understand this. They're not describing the Sigma. They're revealing what makes them uncomfortable about themselves in his presence. And that, right there, is the brutal truth. If this video shook your perspective or gave you a glimpse into the mind of the Sigma male, don't keep it to yourself. Smash that like button, drop a comment below, and share this with someone who needs to hear the brutal truth. We're diving deeper into the psychology, the mystery, and the raw realities most people are too afraid to say out loud. So if that's your kind of content, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment. Your support helps keep this unapologetically real. And trust me, we're just getting started.